walking across earlier.
Are we fixed, Todd, or should we do them?
You have to do, yeah, I can't, it's a mystery.
That's okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter as long as I know.
Thank you.
Just a little leaf word. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near, gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit draw near.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane, where our mission is to join together to create a nourishing, liberal religious home and to champion justice, diversity, and environmental stewardship in our wider world. Or as we say in short, to create community, find meaning, and work for justice. Welcome to one and all. I want to begin by embracing all that you bring with you today, all of your uniqueness, your unique beliefs, your background, your lifestyle, your experiences, your differences, all that make you who you are, is welcome here this morning. And of course, this includes those who hear me say this every Sunday, and it's never by rote, I always mean it, as well as those who might be joining us more recently and hearing it for the first time today. You're also equally as welcome. And of course, it includes those of you who are streaming with us this morning too, so I'm so glad to know that you're with us. So thanks. I think Ed and Patty Tyler are watching, because I saw you this week and you told me you watch every Sunday, so special hello to you. Yeah, so before we take a couple minutes to greet one another, you've probably noticed we have a very special exhibit in the back that I hope you'll take time to explore during our social hour. And I'm going to ask my friend John Hancock to come forward and talk just a little bit about this very special exhibit that we're so honored to have in our church today. John?
Warriors Heart to Art is a 5-day arts healing retreat for veterans with PTSD. And what you see in the back of the church is an examples of the artwork that's been used to help those veterans feel, reveal, and tell their story to us and to each other. And what we believe in the healing business of PTSD is that when you make a piece of art, you use a different part of your brain than when you're just thinking or speaking. And there's a discovery of what's really the truth about your own experience. And we as civilians are not often really durable enough to hear the reality of what veterans do. And the part that's real, that's the easiest to listen to, is what happens to them in war. What they do is a certain kind of horror hurt that calls into question all of what we believe to be true. So the hard idea about this is that what we call a disorder may not be a disorder at all. It may be a perfectly normal response to the horrors of being a soldier. And if it's a disorder, maybe it's ours, not theirs. Because our society hasn't figured out very well how to help these people recover from what we ask them to do. So those are the thought-provoking things that I invite you to look at, think about, and if you're moved to think harder, join us as a volunteer, join us as a donor, and think hard about what the feelings of these experiences have in common with our own. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Let's take a few moments now to greet one another, and as I ask each Sunday, say hi to those you look forward to seeing on Sunday mornings. I hope that you will make some new friends today, and if you are joining us for the first time, please don't be shy. Buddy.
How are you doing, buddy? Good. I got your text. I've been caught up, so yeah, let's grab lunch. Okay. Next week, the following week, either next week or I guess it's this week. Kind of too busy trying to
Thank you, and there'll be more opportunity to visit with one another during social hour after our service, so I invite you to stay around for that. I do want to mention that for whatever reason, we can't get our computer to communicate properly with the TV, and so we're giving them a timeout. So I'm asking you to use this old-fashioned technology. It's called a hymnal. You'll find them in your seat. Now, when you hold it, there are going to be no buttons to push. You just open it up, and it's going to be pretty neat. It's the way our ancestors used to do it. So let's go ahead and light our chalice, the symbol of our faith, the symbol of our unity and our solidarity, of our openness and our inclusion, of our community and our individual uniqueness. May this small flame be our offering of warmth to those who are cold and alone, and a light to those in darkness. May it be a flame that ignites justice in our world and a beacon of hope to those in need, and may it reflect at least a spark of truth wherever truth has been lost, and cast a healthy shadow of doubt wherever it's been found.
A rational mystic is how I would describe myself if asked to sum up my beliefs as a UU. That is a term I first heard used by Aaron Fitzgerald, and it resonated with me. It means someone called to use their brains, to follow their curiosity in search of answers, yet to know at the same time that we are part of a great mystery that can never be fully understood. It means being open to clues, messages, and invitations, like from a dream. Many years ago, this poem came to me, and despite being interrupted for several hours as I wrote it, the rhyme managed to stay with me. Dreams. Dreams do come and dreams do call. Listen, listen with your all. A whisper, a fragment, a dissolving scene, a shadowy figure. What does it mean? A person, an image, a wild, wild beast, a finding, a feeling, a secret unleashed, a spilling, a sifting, a smoky milieu. The dreams there calling, calling to you. A searching, a seeking, a time to review, a secret to treasure is locked within you. Remember, remember to hold to the light the mysterious messages of the dark night.
Our first in-service hymn of the morning is number 8 in your hardback gray hymnal. It's Mother Spirit, Father Spirit. This one has deep historic roots for us. It actually was written by a famous minister, Norbert Csapek, in Hungary, and comes from our Transylvanian roots. Please stand as you're willing and able. I'll have Michelina play the whole thing through since it's somewhat unfamiliar.
I would like to invite forward our young and our young at heart for a story for all ages. This story I have to share with you this morning was handed down to me by storytellers, and there are versions of this story that are handed down around the world. It is a universal story, and it begins on a day not so different than today. And a traveler came to a town. They had been traveling for quite some time. They were cold and tired and hungry and needed a place to find some food and get some nourishment. And so the traveler finally came upon a church and saw that there were lights on. And so there must be something happening. And so the traveler came up to the door and knocked and waited. And pretty soon the door opened and there was a family standing there, and they said, What can we do for you? Welcome. And the travelers told them their tale and said, I need some food and nourishment. Do you know where I can go? And the family said, well, you have come to the right place. Come on in, come in. And the traveler came in and walked into a great hall where they saw families and elders together creating ornaments and stringing lights on a beautiful big tree. And the traveler looked on in wonderment and then turned to the family and said, you have a lot of mouths to feed tonight. I don't want to add another one. And the family said, no, you are welcome here. And don't even worry about it, because we have a magic stone that will feed everybody. And the traveler thought about it and kind of thought, what did I get myself into here? I have a magic stone? What? And the family saw the skepticism on the traveler's face and said, it's really magic. Trust us. Let us show you. And so they gathered everybody around this great pot and told the traveler, once a year, we gather together to decorate our sacred space for the holiday seasons. And when we do that, we take this great stone and it feeds all of us. And so with great ceremony, they set it into the pot. And they poured water into it, and they let it come to a boil. And after a little while, when it had come to a boil, they took a spoon and they said, please, you are our guest. Taste our great soup. The traveler took a sip and looked around, and turned to the family and said, I'm sorry, it tastes like hot water. It doesn't taste like soup. And they said, you're right. We could really use some herbs. Who has herbs to contribute to this soup? Please bring the herbs forward. Thank you. Oh, and you have a carrot. Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. And so they let the herbs and the carrot boil in the water for a little while, and they said, okay, taste it now. So the traveler came and took another sip. And he said, I mean, now it tastes like water with herbs and a carrot. It doesn't taste like soup yet. I'm sorry. And they said, you're right. It needs some more meat. It needs something to chew on. Does anybody have a potato? Thank you. Oh, thank you for bringing forth this potato for our great soup. And so they did this over and over again until they had a wonderful, bubbling, good-smelling stew to share. And they passed out bowls of soup, and they sat and ate together. And the traveler was in awe and thought, wow, this is amazing. They have come together, and they decorate their space, and they share this beautiful meal. So I share this story for two reasons. First, it's one of my favorites. And the second is because next Saturday, we are having our own winter decorating party where we will decorate our sacred space with a beautiful tree, and we will have a stone soup. You can go to our website and sign up to bring an ingredient to contribute to our shared meal. And with that, we'll light our second chalice.
We light the second chalice so that as our children and youth go to their chapels, they carry the light of our flame with them. May it illuminate, inspire, and warm you as it does us.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My name is Rochelle Strother, and I am a member of the Path to Membership team, which welcomes and orients new members to our wonderful church. And it's really a delight to be able to celebrate our New Member Sunday. We do this twice a year. For me, I always think about when I came to this church about 5 years ago, how wonderful it was to find a community of like-minded people and to be able to welcome others in the same way is very, very fulfilling. So at this time, we'd like to invite all of the new members to join us in front. And if you could come and just form a line right behind Todd here. And even if your name is not on the focus, you are still welcome to come. Please do bring your orange or gold sheet if you don't mind, because we'll be using it. We have extras if you need them.
We are honored that you have chosen to become members of our church, having found a connection with Unitarian Universalism and expressed your commitment to this community. Membership at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Spokane is both a privilege and a responsibility. It's a place we hope that you will feel safe to explore your own path, yet feel a sense of belonging and support. We look forward to our work together in fulfilling the mission of our church and to the many gifts and support that all of you bring us. As we now welcome you individually, we seal this covenant with a rose, symbolizing our hope that you will fully bloom in your new church home. I invite you now to recite, if you will, the words under new members on your program. Thank you so much. And now I'm going to give our members that are here an opportunity to welcome you in a very special way by joining me in responsive reading number 442. And you guys just get to listen and know that these sentiments are heartfelt. Number 442. I have to get to 442 myself. It's difficult with one hand. This old technology, I told you. Computer. Gosh, I should have had Rochelle help me here. Okay. And I'll go ahead and start and ask the congregation to be our respondents. We bid you welcome who come with weary spirits seeking rest.
Who come with troubles that are too much with you, who come hurt and
We bid you welcome who come with hope in your heart. We bid you welcome who are seekers of a new faith. We bid you welcome who enter this hall as a homecoming. Whoever you are, whatever you are, wherever you are on your journey, we bid you welcome. Now, real quickly, so folks can get to know you, I'm going to go through and have, well, I'll just pass the mic, and each of you say your name, but put it up close to your mouth so that they can hear you. And there is going to be a test, so take notes.
Lynn Israel.
Carly Fisher.
Molly Suter.
I'm Johnny Culver.
Lois Cole.
Mel Cole.
Deb Weaver.
David Weaver.
Cassidy Berg.
Rochelle Gettle.
Erica Delwo.
Tiffany Dixon.
Sean Thayer.
Carol Strite.
You've got to say your name into the microphone because it's fun.
Beatrix.
Beatrix. Did you want to say, or you want me to? Oh, sure. So before I do this. Okay. Well, you have more people to announce. Oh, good. Okay.
So as of our last New Member Sunday, we had additional people who signed our membership book who are not here, but we do want to recognize them. And those are Linda Hunter, Ian White, Dustin Hall, Aaron Rowe, Dorothy Rowe, Brian Kruger, Claire Cooley, Sonia Petty, David Petty, Elliot Sneed, Mel Cole, and Lois Cole. Thank you.
Yes, do give a warm hand to our new class of members. Welcome to all, and I am now going to invite you to sign our membership as a symbol of your place among us, and I think Deb is going to lead us in a special congregational hymn while you'll do that.
Yep, we're going to sing to him, and please pick up a turquoise hymnal. It's the soft-backed hymnal, and we're going to sing number 1008. 1008, When Our Heart is in a Holy Place.
When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is in a holy place, we are blessed with love and amazing grace. When our heart is in a holy place, when we trust the wisdom in each of us, every color, every creed alike, and we see our faces in each other's eyes, then our heart is in a holy place. When our heart is in a holy place, when our heart is is in a holy place.
As we are finishing with this song, we will now gratefully give and receive this morning's offering, which sustains this community and its mission to the larger world.
Thank you, Michelina. We're now going to kindle our candles of care for those who are most on our hearts and minds, and begin this morning with a candle for Chuck Elson, whose mother Janet passed away peacefully and quietly, surrounded by family, he says, in the early hours the day after Thanksgiving. Also, a request from Jane Higuera, who wants us to kindle a candle for people who are homeless anywhere, but especially at this time in our own community here in Spokane. Let's take a moment of silence on behalf of others, and as always, you're welcome to name them aloud at this time if you'd like. those named aloud and those embraced in our silence, and all those who are suffering in our world at this hour, we hold in our community with compassion.
I invite you now into our time of meditation. Please find a comfortable posture and take a few deep breaths. I will lead you into the mystery with these words from my word box poem. An undercurrent of mysticism binds us all, whether we are aware or not. Inexhaustible, robust even, it balances the reality we know with the unseen reality that is. We are only guests here in our present guises. Soon enough, the hourglass will drain and we will be plucked into another realm. Our entrance and our exit from this world wreathed around borrowed time.
Oh sings on and on again. Sings on, sings on, sings on, sings on, sings on, sings on, sings on.
So it wasn't until 1965, and that is a year after I was born, which means it wasn't that long ago. But it was well after 2 worldwide wars and the Korean War in the same country and at the start of Vietnam that the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that a person does not have to believe in God to be a conscientious objector. 1965. Prior to this decision, applicants seeking such status were asked to check yes or no to the question, do you believe in a supreme being? If they checked no, their application was automatically denied, since atheists were believed to have no conscience to begin with. To most people at the time, the very idea that an atheist could morally object to anything seemed an absurd contradiction. How can one have morals without having religion? It's the same sort of response I get today when people find out I'm both an atheist and a minister, or that there are both believers and non-believers in our church. One fellow recently expressed relief to find out that there are at least some believers among us, because he said you can't call it a church if it's atheist. This opinion represents a narrow understanding of religion that leaves out 2.5 billion people alive today who are part of non-theistic religious traditions, like Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism, religious humanism, among others. Some of these may have myths about various deities, but they are not defined by any specific theology. Unlike being a Christian, one isn't considered a Buddhist, Hindu, Taoist, or humanist because of what one specifically believes about God. Adherents of these religions rather strive to live by their respective philosophies of life: the Four Noble Truths, Dharma and Karma, harmony with nature, and human agency. I personally believe that anyone who devotes most of their time and resources to anything is religious about it, be it God or golf, or anything in between. It might surprise some of you to know that it has only been in recent years that I've taken to calling myself an atheist. As a child, I was not part of a religious family, but I had an image of God in my mind as far back as I can remember that lasted for many years. It had a giant body made of trees, and its head was the Milky Way galaxy, which reminded me of an all-seeing eye. I prayed to this God sometimes, especially when I was afraid and helpless, which was all too often. It never intervened to prevent the troubles of my childhood, but to this day, on an emotional level at least, I feel its love and still feel that it's watching over me. And that's pretty much the extent of the theology I managed to patch together and hold throughout most of my childhood. As a teenager, I became a born-again Christian, a Jesus freak, as some nicknamed us, and started going to church, eventually landing in a nearby Southern Baptist church. And that's when my theology began to change, as I learned about God's supposed will and ways from others, and about His plan for my life and the life of everyone, about all the do's and don'ts, and especially about His obsession with what I think. There were good ideas and bad ideas, and it was a sin to have bad ideas. Those sinners who had them were to be converted or condemned. So at this point, God seemed like an invisible man with telepathic powers, a person I just couldn't see, who was always around and dispensed love and protection to those who had the right ideas, and anger and punishment to those who had the wrong ideas. After 10 years as a Christian, which included attending a Southern Baptist college and being ordained as a Southern Baptist minister, I quit Christianity before completing seminary. This wasn't the result of any single event or falling out, as I'm often asked. I'd just grown up intellectually and could no longer maintain what I considered such primitive nonsense. I was fortunate, despite being on a ministerial track in college, to have professors who taught me to think critically about everything, including religion. Considering the perennial questions associated with the study of philosophy, especially epistemology, metaphysics, logic, and ethics, the conservative Christian theology I'd been taught became ludicrous to me. I felt even a little embarrassed to have been so completely taken in by it, but mostly dismissed it as part of my own maturation. I still liked Jesus after that, although I understood he was only a historical person with some good ideas who lived and died admirably. And I still believed in God, though exactly what that meant became increasingly nebulous. I soon began substituting the word universe for God, which seems more like that original theology of my childhood, seeing God as a connecting force between everything, like a galaxy-headed tree. Soon thereafter, I turned to psychology, which means the study of the soul. When I was in Christianity, we never studied the soul. In search of greater understanding of myself and my world, I eventually stumbled upon Erich Fromm's The Art of Loving, in which he outlined theological development throughout human history. In the beginning of this development, he explains, we find a despotic, jealous God who considers man whom he created as his property and is entitled to do with him whatever he pleases. This stage corresponds well with developmental psychology's idea of morality. It's a pre-conventional idea of morality defined as extremist or black and white thinking, authoritarian, punitive as well. Fromm called it the anthropocentric stage because it perceives God to be a person, like oneself. At the second stage of theological development, which Fromm called the covenantal stage, God and humans enter into a kind of contract that can't be broken unless one party violates the agreement. For example, God makes a covenant with Noah, Fromm explains, in which he promises never to destroy the human race again, a covenant by which he is bound himself. So now even God has to obey some rules. And this too corresponds well with the conventional stage of moral development, at which morality is based upon law and order in meeting our social obligations. But at theological maturation, if we get there, Fromm says, God ceases to be a person, a man, a father, but becomes the symbol of the principle behind the manifoldness of phenomena. At this stage, he says, God is transformed from the figure of a father into the symbol of his principles, those of justice, truth, and love. God is truth. God is love. In short, theologically speaking, God is no longer a principle, but is no longer a person, but a principle. This stage, too, corresponds perfectly with the post-conventional stage of moral development, when morality is no longer based on rules, but upon universal principles, like love and justice, that transcend society's rules and conventions. And this is the level where it becomes permissible, if not a requirement, to break the rules through nonviolent civil disobedience, for example, when necessary to prevent real injustice and harm to others. I'm pretty sure Fromm wasn't aware of Kohlberg's stages of development, so it's really interesting that the theological development that he picked out corresponds so perfectly with Kohlberg's idea of moral development. This concept of God as a principle rather than as a person really struck a chord with me, and it still does, as does Fromm's statement that God cannot have a name. A name always denotes a thing or a person, something finite. How can God have a name if God is not a person, a thing? For this reason, the truly religious person, he thought, does not love God as a child loves its father or mother, but sees God as a symbol of humanity's striving for love, truth, and justice, and the full unfolding of human potential. When this happens, he says, one does not speak about God nor even mention God's name. To love God, if one were going to use that word, would mean then to long for the attainment of the full capacity to love, for the realization of that which God stands for in one's self. God, in this sense, becomes our highest aspirations and our potential. This is why Fromm came to define himself eventually as an atheistic mystic. Because, as he said, the most that I can do is say what God is not, to state negative attributes, to postulate that God is not limited, not unkind, not unjust. The more I know what God is not, the more knowledge I have of God. He felt it was not only impossible to talk about God in a meaningful way, but also unnecessary, if not unethical. As such, Fromm said, one does not pray for anything, does not expect anything from God, does not speak about God, nor even mention God's name. This notion is true of mystical theology in general. Taoism says the name that can be named is not the eternal name, and that mystery within mystery is the gateway to all understanding. Hinduism says one can only say not or neti. It is ungraspable, for it cannot be grasped. The Jewish Kabbalah says every definition of God leads to heresy. St. John of the Cross said, the soul travels to God not knowing rather than knowing, and Meister Eckhart called God absolute nothing. So I'd be perfectly fine with continuing to call myself an atheistic mystic, like my ideological mentor, were it not for a funny thing that happened to me on my way to work one day. Actually, it was my first day of work in the office here at UUCS more than 7 years ago. I'd received a call from a TV news crew wanting to interview me about a controversial atheist ad campaign after it was okayed to place on the sides of public buses. I was happy to comment and told the reporter I was pleased when freedom of speech is upheld in our society on any issue. I wasn't sure why they wanted to talk to me, and they never asked anything about my religious beliefs, but that night I was identified on the news as atheist minister Todd Eklof. It wasn't exactly how I was planning to spend my first day on the job. But nobody seemed to mind. And after I thought about it, I realized it's true. I am an atheist. When most people ask if one believes in God, they're really asking if one believes in a person named God. Since I don't believe in a personal God, that is, in a divine being with a consciousness and a personality, calling myself an atheist is a whole lot easier than jumping through all the intellectual hoops necessary to explain my complicated theology. Since you just heard it, you would probably agree. So thanks to KXLY's shoddy reporting, I've been an atheist ever since. But sometimes I say just because I'm an atheist doesn't mean I don't believe in God. Now this is, of course, the kind of paradoxical reasoning that is typical of all mystics. That is, of our comfort being in the mist, with the fogginess, in the cognitive dissonance, the cloud of unknowing and uncertainty that makes our lives exciting and worth living. To explain, again, at the first stage of development, when we see things dualistically, or black and white, hot and cold, right or wrong, the question of God's existence must be answered either yes or no. Since this is the level at which the question is usually posed, I try to be as honest as possible, and I say no. If it's a two-dimensional question, I give a two-dimensional answer. If we want to become multidimensional, then my answer would be different. So if one wishes to theologize about higher principles by saying that God is love, or God is truth, as Gandhi did, and Jesus did, or God is justice, as the Hebrew prophets did, then I am happy to admit that I believe in God, since I also believe in these impersonal principles. If we theologize these principles, I believe in them. So, why then don't I believe in a personal God? To me, the answer should be obvious. It makes more sense to ask why anyone does believe in a personal God. I disbelieve for two reasons. Firstly, such a notion, as far as I'm concerned, defies reason. There's no empirical evidence that such a being can or does exist. In fact, all the evidence is to the contrary. Science has explained our existence far more plausibly than any ancient creation stories have, and has uncovered no physical evidence pointing to a divine being. Though there are still many questions, many mysteries to be solved, and many that may never be solved, it is a fallacy to stuff the absence of our knowledge with the God of the gaps. Saying that we don't have the answers, therefore God must be the answer, is a non sequitur. It simply does not follow. We don't know what, if anything, existed before the Big Bang, for instance, but this doesn't lead to the conclusion that God must have created it. No more than it suggests it must have been caused by advanced aliens, or is a holographic matrix being generated by a quantum computer. The second reason that I disbelieve is because of what theology refers to as the problem of God. How many of you knew God had a problem? So, yeah. What is the problem of God? Anyone want to take a guess? Yes. How does God allow evil? Big problem, yeah. If God exists, why also does evil exist? Why is there evil and suffering? Often evil is equated with suffering by the old theologians. So if God exists and is all-knowing, all-loving, and all-powerful, how can God allow such suffering in the world? There have been many attempts to explain this, but none are very convincing. Some blame it on free will. God doesn't like to force people to follow his will. But if that were so, why threaten them with eternal hell? Right? I mean, damnation seems pretty controlling to me. It's my way or the Fry way. How, furthermore, if nothing exists outside of God, if God is omnipresent, and therefore nothing else exists outside of God, is it possible to claim God isn't partly evil? Both cannot be true. Either God contains evil, or there is something more than God, or there is evil and no such thing as God. This contradiction is so problematic. Rather than denying the existence of God, some have actually tried to deny the existence of evil. They argue evil isn't something that exists, but is the absence of God's goodness. If this were so, however, it still denies that God is everywhere, which leads to another theological problem. Still, others have claimed that suffering and evil are just illusions. Either some kind of tough love meant to teach us a valuable lesson that we'll appreciate and understand when we're on a higher plane of existence, or else an illusion caused by our own minds. I think that there's ample proof of real suffering and injustice in the world. Too many unanswered prayers for there to be an omniscient, omnipotent, all-loving, omnipresent being out there. No loving person with the power to prevent human sorrow and cruelty could justify not doing so. I do believe the nature of the universe is love and justice, that is, attraction and harmony or balance. But I consider these to be weak forces, rather like gravity, that only delicately hold and draw us together. Many years ago, while still in my 20s, I had a lucid dream. Lucid dreaming means being aware that one is dreaming. I was in a medieval tavern where there was much drinking and partying going on when I suddenly became aware that I was dreaming. Since dreams have been said to come from God, I decided to seize the opportunity to try to get some answers. So I exited this rustic tavern and stepped into a cold, barren environment consisting of dark gray skies and nothing but a dead rocky surface for as far as I could see. I yelled, "God, where are you?" and only got my own echo in reply. Again, I yelled, "God, where are you?" Then for a third time, I got only the word "God" out of my mouth when my eyes suddenly snapped open and I found myself wide awake in my bed. I've thought about this dream over the years, about what it might mean, if anything. At first I wondered if it meant God isn't in my dreams, or in some place to be discovered, but exists in the waking world, in the reality of life, embodied in oneself, in the way that we incarnate our values and aspirations. In this sense, God isn't a person, but a relationship between persons, a way of being with each other and being in our world. Wherever two or more are gathered and relate to each other in a loving way, God becomes a relationship between them. Whenever we relate to each other, including to other beings and to our earth in unloving ways, God truly is absent, or but a weak force barely holding things together. But I've also wondered if that dark, gray, barren world in which no voice answered my call means there is no answer because there is no God, and that I needed to wake up and realize it. It was easy to enjoy life inside the rustic tavern of my imagination while I was asleep, but I needed to wake up by stepping outside of my unconscious, autistic reality to face the empirical world on its own terms. Even though the world can be a cold, dark, empty place with no answers, I need to deal with the reality objectively as it is, not as I wish it to be. Perhaps, like Scrooge, the dream was no more than the result of a bad bowl of gruel before bedtime. Or maybe both my interpretations are true. There is no person named God who can answer our prayers or give us the perennial questions, answers to the perennial questions of life. Yet, maybe it is also possible to manifest God, something divine between us through loving and caring relationships, and by incarnating our greatest values and highest aspirations in the world around us. Thank you.
Our final hymn is a beautiful one, and I think in its own way speaks to Todd's topic. Please use your gray hymnal, hardback, and we will sing number 4. I brought my spirit to the sea, please rise, and spirit and body.
Our benediction is by Eric Williams. We all emerge from, dwell within, are transformed by, and called back to love. May your mind be humbled before this mystery. May your heart grow hopeful by it. May you be sustained by this love always. Amen. Blessed be. Salam alaikum and shalom.
Shalom.